right, everybody, how you doing? It's Patrick Henningsen here. It's a special midweek edition of 21 Wire Live. We don't normally do the Sunday show. You guys watching us on Sunday for the Sunday Wire. This is something a little bit different. We're adding some more programming here midweek, and really happy and pleased to be able to do that, especially because of the people that we'll be talking to. And of course, one of the most important people at 21st Century Wire is our guest today. We're going to have a discussion, and we'll bring him up on stage. Freddie Ponton, who is a special contributor at 21 Wire. Freddie, it's great to have you with us this week. How are you doing?
I'm very good, Patrick. It's good to be on the show. I've been away from talking show for quite some time, so it's good to be back. There's a lot of things to cover, and yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting program today. So I'm looking forward to it.
No, it's great to great to be able to talk to you. There's a lot of important stuff going on. I know that you recently did a discussion on a crosstalk with Peter Lavelle, and you're covering the situation that we're going to be talking about today. I mean, firstly, I want to talk to you about the situation with Ukraine in Europe, the big expectations. We got a new president, obviously, in the United States, Donald Trump. But like, what does that really mean? He said this was his hype before in the campaign. I'm going to solve this thing in 24 hours. Just make sure you get me in the White House, and I will put an end to this conflict. Trump said it would never have happened if I was president. And he's even got Putin recently to kind of parrot that one. So he got some free public relations from the Russian president, who said that, yeah, maybe the Ukraine war wouldn't have kicked off if Trump had been president. So Putin's already kind of laid the table out. It's given Trump some runway there. The big question, though, Freddie, is what can Trump actually do in this situation? Because when we look at this situation in Ukraine, with how dug in NATO is, this guy that they've got running in Kiev as president, this actor, the antics that he's doing, drone attacks in 10 different regions in Russia last week. I mean, it's not going to be easy. What do you think? Is there a peace deal in the making? If there is a peace deal, Freddie, how's he going to be able to put it together? That's the thing.
Well, that's a lot to unpack for sure. I mean, what's interesting is Trump has a talent to inherit some hot potatoes after the previous administration, and I think they left a pretty heavy dossier on his lap to address, and I think it's also a kind of grim reminder of how little a president himself can do without taking into consideration the strength of the House and the Congress, and of course the people he's surrounding himself with. So that's the first clue that we're getting as far as where these policies are going to go, and what could be expected from the Trump administration. So we're still in the finding out process. You know, not everybody has been confirmed, I believe, but it's interesting to see the kind of the bench of characters that he's surrounding himself with, and it's unfortunately it doesn't look great as far as getting peace achieved, and of course as far as hearing something intelligence coming out of this administration, at least not in the early part of the mandate, simply because the way they've already addressed the Ukrainian conflict, it's just absolutely concerning and worrying. A lot of misleading comments were made. We know Trump's tendency to exaggerate and tendency for hyperbole is definitely something that it's big. We're going to see more of that.
But it must be driving the Europeans and the Russians crazy when he's saying some of these crazy statements like Russia's lost 1 million soldiers. You put the Ukrainian losses at 700,000, Russia at 1 million soldiers. And he said that Russia lost 60 million people during the Second World War, or something like that. I mean, it's almost like everyone's kind of accepted that Trump's going to say some really stupid shit, basically, and they've priced it into the whole, the interactions, or it's baked in already. It's almost there's hardly any shock about what his first term, that would have been headlines all week, but now nothing.
Nothing. It's not going anywhere. It's just literally a flash in the pan exercise. It doesn't destabilize Russia one bit. I think uh, the Russian federations, the Kremlin, and Vladimir Putin have already said what they wanted to say with regards to these potential discussions to address not only the surrender of Ukraine, because that's really the foundations of any negotiations. I mean, we really need to go back to the reality of the battleground here. And although they've been trying to sell us, and the Western medias have tried to sell us the idea that Ukraine was really on the verge of winning this war. And the reality is the maps, and if you listen to the right military advisors and commentators, then you will really realize very quickly that Ukraine is on the back foot, and it's a serious back foot. We saw last week already a major move, controlling areas around two rivers and moving forward deeper towards the Dnieper River. It's simply not looking good, and I think Ukraine has been suffering from human resources per se. So their recruitment policy has not delivered what they had hoped for, and the result is felt on the battlefield. So again, the point that I'm making here is that everything that we need to see and that will have to be contemplated refer back to the battleground, to the battlefield, and that's really what we are waiting to hear from whether the European Union or the Trump administration, to recognize that this is a defeat or close to a defeat. And if Ukraine wants to have a countries left to fight for, to negotiate for, they're better off, starting to find a way to come to the table.
So you got this new guy, Dutchman, Mark Rutte, in charge of NATO. He is dashing around, talking tough, trying to pick up where Jan Stoltenberg left off. Mm-hmm. That sort of, man in the suit, man of action, talking sort of a big game. European NATO partners, what leverage? They don't have any leverage in Ukraine. They've got nothing. It's really the U.S. and basically telling Kiev what to do. European partners are just there kind of as a cheerleading section, really, and maybe some equipment. But yeah, what else have they got? I mean, they could have leverage, Freddie, if they got together and told Washington, we're done. Europe could have leverage. But Rutte is there as a kind of sheepdog, I think, with the European Union. I mean, that's his role, is to keep everybody kind of penned in. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, you have to understand this is all a show. At the end of the day, if you look at NATO itself as an organization, we can see the currents within NATO. So for people like myself that look in NATO pretty much every day and what's going on in there, and understanding the chain of commands and how things are actually executed and what these guys are planning for 2025 and beyond, we can clearly see that there is no intention for NATO per se to go anywhere. But the problem is clearly that the Mark Rutte or the Jens Stoltenberg of the world are just there they're part of a casting, if you will. That's as far as he gets. But really, the line is, as you said, is the US that are calling the shots all the way, and they've basically almost captured the European Union to some degree. I mean, the rapprochement between NATO and the EU is considerable now. If you look back at the early COVID-19 discussions and incidents, you can clearly see how NATO has penetrated the EU much further and much more ingrained into the foreign policy of the European Union. So that's the reason why we're hearing all this kind of rhetoric coming out of Kallas, Estonian vice president of the European Union, which has no better idea than to announce that a plan is to dismantle Russia and make Russia multiple mini states. I think that's her idea of negotiation. Yeah, she said that publicly.
She actually said that. And we were told that was a conspiracy theory that Putin made up.
Oh no, there's the recording of her saying, mentioning that's a good idea, because she's obviously the foreign policy, European foreign policy spokesperson, really. So she thought that maybe she needed to make a name for herself, So the lack of intelligence, the lack of leadership is definitely starting to show, and it's been like this for quite some time, and it demonstrates that this unhealthy loyalty, Europe unhealthy loyalty towards the United States is becoming to I think it's a train that it's a boat that has already sailed, and they realize that the priority of the United States is the United States. It's not Europe. They never cared about Europe one day. They refused to leave after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And this is not about providing stability for Europe. It was about consolidating an organization that will be easier to interface with instead of have to interface with 20 or 30 countries. So you have one major organization, which it's easier to control whatever, happening further down the line or the chain of command. It's irrelevant. At the top, it's easier to have a Europe interface for the United States. And they've done an excellent job for the past 40 years to literally destroy the economy, basically create tensions amongst different actors of the European Union, and then, of course, get us really to believe that Russia was the enemy, and then there will be no stability in Europe unless Russia is defeated. So that's the entire foreign policy of Europe, which is designed by the United States. All the rest is shenanigan and big money, big tickets, and everybody's is filling up their pockets, But we haven't had real politics where there is an ideology, but not an ideology, an idea and a concept as far as understanding where the world is going. Where is the 21st century going and taking us? How Europe is equipped? What are the instruments, the tools that we have put in place in order to accommodate the reality of a multipolar world? And that is really what it is. So in another word, if you will, Europe was on the US hegemony train, if you will, the gravy train of hegemony, and thought that they would be considered as an equal partner. But that was just simply gullible at best. And I think everything shows today that Europe has had no power for a very long time and has absolutely acted as a vassal state of the United States. And that's what we are talking about, the balance of power. And the way to address it, the Callas way, the Callas doctrine, is to dismantle Russia. We call it the Callas doctrine. I think it could get some traction.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and hand out the hallucinogenic drugs at the same time. I don't know where she's at. I mean, it's crazy. No, I think you bring up so many good points, Freddie. I think Europe. I think there was a fork in the road for Europe a few years ago, where they had an opportunity with European collective defense to chart their own path. But I think the U.S. really and Britain really doubled down hard on a lot of this stuff and created a situation, first with Brexit and then with the Ukraine conflict. And these two things have suited the United States and Britain in the short term anyway, to create a situation, along with the Green New Deal and getting Germany to be energy dependent and trapped, really, shutting their nuclear plants down, kind of trying the same thing with France, quite frankly, by putting France in the corner where it's no longer exporting as much energy as it used to. Used to be a net exporter of electricity. France's nuclear fleet was the world's biggest per capita in the world. So Germany and France. And now we have a situation where the only European policy seems to be Russia bad, Russia bad. That's it. For the economy, Russia bad. For geopolitics, Russia bad. For security, Russia bad. And that's it. There's no, like you said, Freddie, there's no strategic vision. Before the strategic vision for Europe, Fred, I think, was expansion. But they've kind of hit the wall with Ukraine and Georgia. Because so there's not, and Turkey's kind of a non-starter. So there's limits to what the EU can do with they had a very aggressive policy of expansion before, and it's kind of hit the rocks, and you can kind of feel it. I mean, don't you think that's changed? So now it's all about war and security and freeing Ukraine, liberating Ukraine. I mean, they've taken this on and it's more about NATO. I think that NATO's kind of eclipsed the EU as the real dominant kind of driver of policy for Europe. I don't know if you agree or not, but
yes, I think you're spot on. I think I'd say back to 2004. I mean, this is when it stopped, really, when the expansion of Europe stopped, really, and it's been pretty dead for the past 20 years, you know. So nothing really has happened as far as the expansion. It was the idea of expansion that, you know, was sold as a way to strengthen Europe as an organization, an institution, if you will. But it's not really delivered on the promise. And it's funny enough, because these are conversations now that are taking place in Davos in 2025. And you've seen many ministers of foreign affairs that are starting to rediscuss the importance of the expansion strategy of Europe. So, of course, for 2025, you're going to have Ukraine, you're going to have Montenegro that is going to be looking at, you know, securing a position there with the EU. But is it really? And we must question really the fundamentals of the expansion theory as far as Europe is concerned. And then the second thing I believe we need to really reevaluate is the United Kingdom, the Brexit. It's the Brexit. What was Cameron's plan, really? And what was really the Brexit strategy? Because it's been sold with some kind of a narrative that will kind of get tractions amongst the citizenry. But behind that, I think there was definitely an idea where Britain wanted to join the US expansion train and being the kind of leader and the bad boy for the US in Europe and leading the preparation in Ukraine as far as you know, weaponizing Ukraine and really starting up really posing a threat for the Russian Federation. So I think we must link this. There is somehow, somewhere, you know, when you read a lot, it's difficult to put it on papers and be absolutely adamant about it. But you can clearly see that there was something to do with the Brexit and Ukraine in terms of the long plan strategy and to really destroy the competition, which is basically Germany and its ability to compete on a global scale. It's a real powerhouse, you know, and then of course cheap gas from Russia. It was always a problem. It's not a new problem. The Nord Stream problem is not a new problem, even when Nord Stream 1 was kind of acclaimed and, you know, very much favored by the European elite. You know, there was a lot of money to be made. A lot of people saw that, you know, that kind of rocked their boat, if you will. But as far as the US is concerned, this was always a threat that needed to be addressed. And I think over the years, it become clear that they needed to find the right people at the helm of Germany to do that. They just couldn't do it with the previous government, with Merkel and Schröder and all these other guys. So they had to wait for their puppet to be there, the one that will be able to sell out Germany, and namely Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany. Probably not for long, but it's going to be, this is someone that is going to go down in history in Germany as someone that has literally participated in the disintegration of Germany. That is absolutely no doubt. And I mean, there's more to come in Germany. Germany is going to have to face the music now, because supporting Ukraine blindly, arming Ukraine when you're supposed to be an organic ally of Russia, despite your relationship and your security agreement with the United States, from an economic point of view, purely economic, absolutely madness to cut your ties with Russia. It's just simply cutting yourself not only from Russia but from Eurasia, and therefore from the Belt and Road Initiative, and of course the middle corridors and all that kind of things. I mean, who is going to want to do business with Germany knowing that they can't make a decision by themselves, because it's an extension of the U.S. foreign policies?
That's the point. Is that you're not negotiating with the individual member states have been so emasculated first by Brussels, okay, and now by NATO. So they've been hit twice. They got two different sort of overlords, three different overlords. If you think about it, they've got Washington directly, then they've got NATO, which they're collectively kind of tied into, and then of course Brussels. Brussels has really become a sort of, shepherd for Washington. If you look at von der Leyen, especially, and now you've got this other Estonian, this mad one, Kallis. She's just so 1 and 2. They're just kind of there just to kind of like, rubber stamp steer things the way Washington wants. And so the individual member states getting very vulnerable. Okay. How vulnerable? Let's talk about how vulnerable. This is how vulnerable. Greenland. Greenland.
Yeah.
What are you going to do now? You are so weak. Now I got a backdoor theory on this, which you are going to love, Freddie. You're going to love, which I will unleash on you. Well, let's come back to that. Let's come back to Greenland. Let's just quickly let's finish off this situation on Ukraine. Can Trump get a deal? Okay, here's the problem. That's the problem right there. So Russia's already said they're not going to do any negotiations with Zelensky because they view him as a lame duck, and he's not a legitimate democratic leader anymore because he suspended democracy indefinitely until whenever he feels like switching democracy back on. So that's Moscow's basically terms. So Trump's coming in there wanting to get a deal with the Russians, but I'm missing something, Freddie. I'm not hearing. We know Zelensky's still there, but like no one's talking about setting an election date, because you're not going to get that deal without an election date unless they're planning to do a military coup, somebody coming in to take over the British and the Americans managing a coup. Zelensky out. Where does he go? Switzerland, Miami, London, whatever. Zelensky in. Arestovich in, or Medvedchuk. No, it's not Medvedchuk. Of course, it's going to be Zelensky, right?
Yeah.
It's, if you had to bet, if the U.S. and the British are planning to basically oust Zelensky, but do it in a controlled way, and who would it be? And then here's the question: would the Russians negotiate before elections with Zelensky as the new Ukrainian president, interim president, or are the Russians going to say, no, we're going to wait for elections? Because Russia's got a problem. They're not going to want to sign a deal or do anything with something that doesn't have a good long-term legitimacy, right? That doesn't solve Moscow's problem, does it?
No, it doesn't. And there's multiple questions in that. So let me unpack. First, the constitutionality is very important. As far as Zelensky is concerned, he's out of his mandate. And if you understand which I know you do, the Ukrainian constitution, it is quite clear that after the 5 years mandate, the power goes back to the parliament, to the Rada. So that's the first thing. So if there is anyone within the Ukrainian administration that can actually conduct any policies on behalf of the Ukrainian people, it is the parliament, right? And that has not happened, as we know. Media has gone out. He's controlled everything. He controls. The United States and Britain controls pretty much everything. So that's the first part, and that is the reason why Vladimir Putin is very adamant about not entertaining any negotiations with Ukraine, and specifically with Zelensky at the helm, because he's simply not legitimate, not according to the Russian Federation Constitution, but to the Ukrainian Constitution. So to go back to you were saying is, are we going to see Arestovich, former spokesperson, and otherwise Zelensky, whose name has appeared on many kind of smoking guns dossiers. So it's interesting. The answer to that is very simple. It's to look at the post organizations of Ukraine and what it could look like, and what basically Britain and the US would like it to look like. What the EU thinks is a bit irrelevant at this stage. And I think that there's going to be a military presence, perhaps an international presence, that might be negotiated, kind of a buffer zone, where Britain will be mainly at the helm of this buffer zone because of their relationship within NATO, because of the chain of command. We can see clearly that they've brought in now more Brits within the NATO Supreme Allied Command, on positions, second, third position. So it's interesting because of NATO's Markham maritime control of the waters in the Arctic, Barents, all the North Sea, and then of course the Baltic Sea. So they're going to want someone that has the knowledge, the expertise, and that can place their own people, which they've been grooming for some time now. So Zelensky will not go and be trialed in any place around the world for his involvement or so-called involvement in the Nord Stream pipeline. He'll be sent back to Ukraine and presented as the legal interface, because they do need to address that. You have no negotiation with Ukraine. There's no document that can be signed with a party or an individual that is illegitimate according to the constitution of Ukraine, because it would make the document basically non-valid, because they could argue, say, well, he signed it, but he didn't have the power because he was illegitimate, and he could go against. And I think what Putin is saying to the world and to the US and to Britain and the EU is, say, I want to sign something that you won't be able to get out of it. That's it. It's going to be for the long term. We're not going to go back to this agenda. We prove to you that it doesn't matter, Ukraine, NATO, you can send everything you want to us. We'll come at you, because the Russian Federation is our backyard, and we're fighting literally with our backyard in the back. So logistic, everything, plus the development of their industries, the ability to adapt to the new kind of warfare, makes really Russia a very serious opponent. I mean, they have hardened fighters now. They've developed their manufacturing, and plus this is the rare mineral resources and important natural resources central, so they don't have to go and beg anybody else to get access to this kind of thing. So manufacturing and entertaining war, you're playing the games of the Russians. They're just good at it. They're good at it, and they're just around the corner. So it's ridiculous to want to go and further this conflict anymore. All they need to do is to first remove Zelensky. I don't think they'll do it as a coup, because they've been promoting democracy for so long. I don't think Ukraine and the US can afford another coup there. I think they're just going to have to invite Zelensky politely but firmly to move away, and then
announce a handover, and then it could be a handover to somebody there, or it could be to Zelensky or something, and then they would have to kind of announce elections.
Well, the elections are important. That's why the idea of 24 hours and, our Trump's ideas and volatile ideas about 24 hours, how do you do that? And from a logistic point of view, from a humanitarian point of view.
The Russians are sticklers for legal administration. I mean, they're like, they're practically, they're worse than the French, probably. And that's saying something. So, like, in terms of getting the documentation, the legal part right, having it stick, having it signed, like stamping it 10 times, that's what they're looking for on this. And so Zelensky's just not going to be able to do that.
Yeah. No, they can't. And there's a process. Anything of this nature has a process, and nothing is going to happen that's going to work or satisfy the Russian Federation, nor the United States or Ukraine, unless everybody is following the process. There is definitely the word. When I was speaking with Peter Lavelle yesterday, he told me that the word capitulation is floating around the media in Russia, and he's right. Capitulation is where everything starts. You don't get to ask your adversary for terms of surrenders unless you capitulate. So that's the process, capitulations, and then you ask if it is possible to negotiate your terms of surrenders, and then from that, the legality of it's got to be scrutinized by both parties to make sure that anything that is going to be agreed upon is legally and internationally valid. And then from that, as I said, whatever the dance and all the rhetoric that comes out of the Trump's mouth or Carle's mouth, it's just, it has no impact on what Russia is doing. Zero.
The only thing that could change is if NATO rushed in troops, a minimum of 100,000 into Kiev, to protect the capital, peacekeepers or whatnot. It would have to be done outside of NATO. Actually, it'd have to be like kind of a tripartite coalition between 3 European countries. You've heard them talking about this, by the way, right?
Yeah.
And France would be one of them, of course,
Yeah.
and the British. The British want a base. They've just, I said this when they announced that they wanted to have a security pact with Ukraine, and Starmer announced that. I knew exactly what that was about. It was about a base. They want a Cyprus situation.
Yeah, it's the right way to put it.
After the war, they want to.
Yeah,
they want to have a GCHQ listening post, military outpost, like Camp Bond-Steel stroke Cyprus kind of arrangement.
Yeah,
that's what they want.
That's what it looks like to me for now. I mean, everything can change. Everything is so volatile because we have a lot of volatile people at the helm, whether it's in the US or in the EU. So there's a lot of things that are kind of coupled with this discussion, the discourse about discussions and negotiations about Ukrainian peace. I like the way the way it's been worded in the mainstream media is very interesting. It's always about addressing peace, right? When no one wanted peace all this time. So if you don't want peace anymore, if you want peace now, why is it? What makes you from going to supporting a major conflict where hundreds of thousands, probably more have died? Doesn't matter which side. What matters is people have died, lives has been lost, so that some people could politically assert their ideas and say that they were doing the right things, with the right amount of money. Unfortunately, at this stage, all that is become irrelevant, really. And I'm afraid, I think even a British base, which is a NATO ally, that's what it is. Britain is a NATO ally, and there's not going to be no NATO in Ukraine. That's what Putin said. Now, is there a deal to be made? Absolutely. But can NATO still operate bases, CIA bases in Ukraine? I don't think so. I don't think this is going to be part of the deal. I think that there's going to be discussions about the reconstruction of Ukraine. They're going to want to make sure that this is not just another operation, just to buy some more times to reconstruct, to rebuild, and to get back at it, in 5 years' time. A lot of talk is, people are saying that NATO will be at war in the next 5-10 years. What is that all about? And what we're hearing for the next Trump's administration mandate is very clear. This is protectionism. This is back to the sphere of influence of Americas in America. So this is the Monroe Doctrine. This is about going back. So we've been filled and we've been invaded by progressives, but everything in their policy shows that we're going back to 1823, with President Monroe, and otherwise, back to these old doctrines where the United States is going to find comfort in rebuilding its economy, trying to manage its really, really far deep abyss of its debt, national debt, which has to be something that needs to be addressed. I mean, I'm glad at least Elon Musk recognized that this is a problem. Yeah. And then how they're going to do it, it's really interesting. I find it very interesting, the kind of jeopardizing any possibility of Russia to have and to negotiate the sphere of influence in Europe and Eurasia and beyond. But on the other hand, the entire new strategy is to consolidate America's manufacturing, transportation, trading infrastructures to allow the United States to not only to confront but to adapt to the reality of the of BRICS plus and the multipolar world. So they're literally dropping Europe. They're dropping them, but they're also out there to make them understand that this has been going on for a long, long time. This was their plan all along. And if they want to do it again, they can. All right. Yeah. So they will leave.
When you say do it again, do you mean post World War II?
Yeah.
Like knock Europe down, come back, rebuild Europe, make Europe a kind of like subsidiary of USA market USA kind of thing. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, it's the approach. That's the United States approach, and it's always been the same approach. As I said, if the approach would have been different, we would have seen NATO moving away from Europe after the fall of the Berlin Wall. They did not, and they did not provide a stability. What they did is to provide an idea of enlargement. So, and we've been sold the idea that this expansion of Europe is a European idea. It's not. It's American idea, because they want to bring in the European states into this trend of expansion, which is part of the bigger global pictures for the US hegemon, and that is the trap we fell for. With the European
strategy. It's Zbigniew Brzezinski's strategy of tension. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, peace through strength.
yeah, because so if there's a deal to get rid of this clown, this Ukrainian guy, and if there's a deal, and if it ended today, the U.S. could claim win. Look, we've pushed NATO further. We've got Sweden and Finland on board now. We've pushed that line of contact right closer to Russia. We've got more bases galore throughout Europe now. I mean, we've militarized the hell. And
we are the biggest LNG supplier in Europe. I mean, what's left for the US to do in Europe?
We'll get to that.
Apart from inviting them to come and do their business in America, what's left to do? I mean, it's what a slap in the face in Europe, and said, we messed up with your country, or the old continent for 50 years. We control all of you, and we decided, and we've called all the shots in Europe for a very, very long time. We achieved what we wanted to do. Germany is on its knees. Russia didn't go according to plan, because the plan was to win, of course, and to dismantle Russia. And then on the other side, they've got their gas and control of their, rescuing the fracking industry in America. And in the meanwhile, they've done their job. They don't need to stay. Let Britain do the kind of avant-garde for the United States.
I don't think they're done. I think they want to suck some more blood out of Europe. So so Trump's saying that he threw out his normal art of the deal. We're thinking about leaving NATO. So that's his negotiation position. So now that's what comes after that is NATO countries need to pay 4.5% of GDP on defense. Because we're tired of picking up the bill, as if that was the arrangement. So then Europe's going to accept probably 3.5%, something like that, 3% maybe. Europe can't afford 3% of GDP on defense. They're already in budget deficits right across Europe. That's just going to create more inflation, right? More borrowing.
Well, you have a financier in chief,
And where are they going to buy the weapons from?
Exactly.
Where are they going to buy the weapons from?
This is Lagarde. You can see Lagarde, former head of the IMF, and with van der Leyen. These are the people that's going to be put in charge of that. You can see they've already got together. They're going to talk about, how we're going to raise this money. How can we get more money to build our own defense industry? It's not about building a European defense industry. I think Emmanuel Macron, with all his lapse, is advocating for the right thing in terms of security. It should have never relied on the United States. If you do that like Germany did, then that's what happened to you. Your economy is going to go down.
He's too
late.
He's
it's
10 years.
Way too late.
Great idea.
Yeah.
But
and Europe is broke. It's going to be, the debt's going to go and go and go. So it's just funny enough, because the US is creating this major mayhem in Europe, and it's going to go back home to address its own inflation. And I'm like, you left an inflation here that is just so bad. We have electricity bills. We have our grandparents that can't even warm themselves up, in Europe, which gets very cold, as during the winter. So that's what they left us with. They just took that down and create an inflation. Food has gone. Last time you came in France, I think you saw the price of food is 30% up. Most of the people, middle income, low income, just simply cannot survive. So this is not something that people can adapt to. The reality is going to have to emerge, and I think it's not going to last very long. I think Europe is going to go through a major shift. Politically, we're going to see obviously more conservative right-wing parties taking over Europe, simply because they understand that although you cannot confuse nationalism and sovereignism, but at the end of the day, you always have a part of sovereignism in nationalism. So sovereignty is going to be very much at the forefront of some of the major political changes that we will see in 2025 and beyond. And that's going to bring, of course, again, that confrontation, since the Trump administration is clearly looking at controlling his own sphere of influence and telling Europe, you can come to work with us under our own conditions. We'll make it easy for you. But this is not a market that he opened for you, really. We control everything. We're going to reinforce our industries. And that's going to be basically back again to where we were the early part of the 20th century. So it's really up at that time. Perhaps we will see Europe finally understanding that the US has always and was always a wild card. It's a real wild card. And with Trump at the helm, it really depends on the legacy he's going to want to leave behind him. If he's going to want to pacify everything and concentrate on what works the best for the American people, then this is the chance. This is the opportunity for Europe to seize that opportunity to really capture this moment, and then really build everything to become its own independent power. Because we're not an independent power. We're not sovereign. United States is not France, is not Germany. We're all very much independent. And this whole EU project, I think my view on this is pretty much, for me, it's just a utopia, complete utopia, dystopian reality. Nothing that they've proposed has worked. All we have is created debt. So if you want, if Europe was a bank, they've done a great job.
It could have worked if they would have just focused on the common market and focused on optimizing economics. Instead, they went political, and they went further and further down that road. And now they're kind of trying to arm wrestle their foreign policy on individual member states. So, I mean, if Europe would go back to basics, the things that, and also, Europe did benefit from a dynamic internal labor market for a while. I mean, that has great legacy benefits, and in Britain benefited from this. Give me a break. Corporate headquarters in London. How many of them were there from Europe? Almost all of them.
Yeah.
And we're not now, gone. The British have taken a hit for I think for Uncle Sam. I mean, in a way, the British have been played to a certain degree as well. Through this whole drama the last couple of years, and it has not panned out economically for Britain at all. Look,
this is not long terms anyway. This is 10 years terms, so they incentivize so that you have all these big funds from across European, capitalism and capitalists that brings their fund to the UK. There was the time where I was in the UK, and then 10 years later, we saw them, they all pulled out because the incentives are now as ended, and next they had to find a new destination to incentivize, and I think Portugal was the next destination. So as I say, the city of London has a plan for 50 years probably, and they know which destination. They can already tell you after Portugal where things are going to be. Are people going to have to invest in Eastern Europe? Perhaps is Poland going to be the new, the new place to put your money? So it's about moving assets. It's about moving big assets, as I say, and big money to generate benefit and profit for the elite. Nothing is changing, and if countries are capable of capitalizing on that, it can also work for them. They just have to be smart about it. Britain done extremely well with that cycle, and of course we are yet to see France to do as great, but I don't know, for some reason it's
funny. Elon Musk went over. He got piped in at the AFD conference there, and on the big screen, and he's saying, "You need to be proud to be German. You should be proud to be German. Should be proud to be German. German's full of German people, said Elon. I mean, he's really profound stuff, right? But so he's pumping up that. So don't have the guilt of the past. Don't carry the old German guilt. Now, hey, that's could be a positive thing for Germany. Obviously, the French might disagree. I'm just joking. I'm kidding. Yeah, but let's be real. So he's gaslighting as a U.S. agent of influence. He's been sent over there to say, look over here at culture war issues. Look over here at grooming gangs or immigration. Let's get riled up on that issue. But and let's talk about German pride, German national identity in the kind of white nationalist sense. But the real question here, the real conversation, Freddie, should be about sovereignty, German sovereignty. And what Elon's not saying to the Germans is, you're militarily occupied by the United States, and you have been since the Second World War, and you cannot make any decisions, not in your media, not in your intelligence services, not even your energy policy. We decide who you buy and who you sell to. The USA does. So Germany is a vassal state of the US. And so Elon's not even mentioning any of this. He's got everybody on these other issues. And I sort of suspect, Freddie, that that's the plan, is the US is not going to leave Germany.
No, Germany is never going to be. They're going to leave all the rest. There's nothing really in them. But for competition purposes, they're going to need German technology and know-how, and that expertise. They want to really to steal it from Europe and bring it to.
They're stealing the companies.
The companies. They're going to steal the German companies.
BASF, Volkswagen, Siemens.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of them. I don't even know if ThyssenKrupp will, if they're going to stay in Germany either. They might be moving to India.
They'll scoop up the know-how, any know-how in Europe, whether it's in France, whether it's in Germany, Netherlands, doesn't matter. They'll scoop up what they need, and when they don't need it anymore, they'll sell it back to Germany and to France like they did with Alstom. It's just the whole process is vicious. And unless, as I said, the problem we have, so many liberal politicians and progressives that have bought into this, the Green Deal, this idea that Europe will be much stronger with a Green Deal and the Paris Accord and Paris agreements and climate change is the major priorities. It is really the top priority for modern civilizations, that's the lie, always people, they buy the lie, and they're like, oh man, we've been lied to, but they never
now you can see it. They're trapped because of the Green Deal has put them in the corner. They're screwed because guess what? Trump just pulled out of all of it. He's out of the Paris Accords. He's out of the WHO. He's out of the WEF. He's out of everything.
It's a finger.
And Europe is still kind of, climate change. And, they're still, it's almost, what a brilliant, if this was an evil plan, it was executed perfectly. It is brutal. It is brutal. So I wanted to, so now weak Europe, individual member states weak. So now Trump goes to Denmark and says, see Greenland? Let's look at this map of Greenland. I want it. I'm going to take it. And what are you going to do about it? Little Denmark. And I'm thinking to myself, this is quite a hard power play by Trump. And Denmark has something over the U.S., though, don't they? That nobody's talking about. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting.
I was just going to throw that out there to you, Fred. Like, do you think maybe there's something going on here?
Well, Ali, okay, I'm just going to let one go out, but you can go and shake it out for yourself, guys. But Denmark is going to need to answer a couple of questions with regards to the Nord Stream pipeline. And I'll tell you the reason why. Yes. The reason actually is in the documents, and you can find it. But I can tell you section number 28 of the Danish Energy Agency contract with Nord Stream AG 2 clearly states that the Danish exclusive economic zone is a submarine. All right, hear me out. It's a submarine training ground for NATO. All right. and then the rest I will tell you all the rest that goes with it, so you can put the puzzle together in when I issue my report.
There's that, but Denmark and Sweden have not made public their findings, especially Denmark. They may very well have evidence that the United States is involved in the Nord Stream sabotage. But then we get a negotiation going on here. And is Greenland worth the price of NATO? And so I'm just throwing that out there, because if the truth was known about Nord Stream, and most people suspect the United States had a major role in it, even Trump admitted this a couple of months ago. He says, I can't say, I don't want to get the country in trouble. U.S. is in enough trouble. I don't want to get them in trouble. You remember that during that interview a couple of months ago? So before he was president. So if the evidence came out, this would hurt NATO. I mean, confidence in NATO would be gone. U.S. would be hugely embarrassed and implicated. Europe would rebel against the U.S. Germany would be ostracized for playing along with it. It would create so much havoc. So Denmark actually has some power there. So is this just a hard play by Trump to get the Danish to back off, to keep them in the corner on this, Brad?
Well, the answer to that is you have to put your shoes into a director of CIA or MI6. How do you approach something like that? Where hypothetically, if you're going to say that the American, and with the help of the Brits, are behind the Nord Stream pipeline, you must absolutely understand the principle that this is basically waters that are controlled by MARCOM, by NATO, okay, by the Brits, which means that ultimately, if they have to target and take out the targets in a territorial or waters that falls under the responsibility of a state, NATO or non-NATO, there's a process in NATO that's called the ARC process. And the ARC process obliged basically NATO Supreme Allied Commander as well as the military committee to ask permission to take a target in their water. What I'm trying to say to you is that you don't get to take the Nord Stream pipeline, okay, in these particular areas of the Baltic Sea without the permission of Denmark. Same apply for Sweden, because it doesn't matter if you're a NATO member or not. If you're considered as a NATO member or as an ally, someone that is aligned with NATO policies or about to become a NATO members, then if you're going to allow forces, whether it's British or US forces, into your waters to commit an act of sabotage, you have to ask the permission. It still applies. It's on documents. It's absolutely undeniable. So again, I think my view on it, and I think you and I have had the chance to talk about that on several occasions, but we have to look at it as a NATO problem. It's a major NATO problems. It doesn't mean that all NATO was aware of what was going on, because there was no need for all NATO to be aware of it. But because of the areas and where it happened and what we found out, I will only remember the people that this is an underwater sabotage. That's mean we're looking for operation underwater. So whatever happens on the surface merely reflect what's happening at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. Whether it was during Baltops 2022 and all this naval exercise prior and after, it really doesn't matter. What matters is simple truth. It was an underwater operation conducted, below the surface on the Bed Sea. Right? That's all you need to know. Well, finding explosive and boats is easy. They're all there. They're all the time there. NATO they call it the lake. It's NATO lake in the Baltic Sea. So what do you need to prove? Where the boats there? Were they closed? Were they not? You're wasting your time. All you need to know is, okay, this is an underwater operation. What am I looking for? Submarine? Mini subs? Have the US and the Brits ever done that before? Is it new for them?
Yeah. And was any evidence removed during the Danish and Swedish and German investigations? Certainly there's a possibility of that happening.
Yeah. What is the business of the United States, USS Hamilton, to be at the blast site? What's the business of US to be there, to secure the site? Why the US contracted, vessels like
Must
Norman
do
Frontier.
something. Yeah.
What's going on here? Why are the US so invested in securing this site and conducting? Because there was no Swedish divers. Everybody knows that. This was, British and American divers going down there. And Biden's announced that he will send divers there to check out on the blast site. We know they were American. We know the name of the boat.
Yep.
And what really perhaps amazed me even the most in this conversation, and we'll close that parenthesis as well, but what amazed me the most is the fact that the Russian Federation has not actually sued Sweden, because Sweden has absolutely no legal rights from an international law point of view to stop any international party to come and go to the site and find out by themselves, what happened to the pipeline. Under which international law Sweden has the right to stop the Russian to come and check out the status of their investment?
In international waters, they can't do a cordon sanitaire.
Might be your exclusive economic zone, but it's still international water. So you see, these are all things that it points to something. When you start to work, and I've been looking into this for 18 months. But it's undeniable that today there is enough direct and indirect evidence that can clearly shows and then reveal that something happened which required the approval and requires the knowledge of Sweden and Denmark, and also Germany, because Germany is on the other side and it's just around the corner. And I will explain why Germany knew all about this operation. All right, I will prove it to you.
Yeah, no, I don't doubt that you will do that. And so that brings us to this northern conversation: Baltic, Scandinavia, the Northeastern Passage, Greenland. These are all connected. These are all connected because this is where geopolitics is shifting. It's the Northeastern Passage, that waterway above Russia's northern coast, then curling around the top of Norway, down into the North Atlantic and into the Atlantic Ocean. This is the new geopolitical choke point. This is the new Bab el-Mandeb Straits, potentially. So there's a lot of activity around it. And this is also where the energy matrix for Europe is transforming. Natural gas, hydrogen. You've commented on this in your previous reports. And so Greenland is an important part of that. So this is, I think, from the U.S. geostrategic point of view, it's almost like they've decided Greenland is not an option; it's a priority. We want it. We either want it as our own, or we want to pull it away from Denmark, via a referendum, independence or whatnot, and have them sign some kind of a direct deal with the U.S. And I would think it's a lot about military, Freddie. It's probably a lot about rare earths and resources as well, but it's really about, as you said, Monroe Doctrine, enforcing Western Hemisphere rights on territory. So it is turning back the clock 150 years.
Yes, it's extremely going back, really. But at this time, there's more geo than politics. It's really about geographical importance of the regions. The North Atlantic as well as the Arctic, all the way down to the Barents Sea and beyond. But this is the control of the northern hemisphere, if you will. That's what it's called, the NP. The Northeast Passage. So you're going to have a lot of battles and a lot of covert clandestine operations going on in there to secure these areas and to undermine Russian effort and positions and right in these international waters. So it's going to be disputed, there's no doubt about it. And this is what Greenland is so important, because this is the last stop before the United States. If you don't control these waters, you allow, very advanced Russian submarine to be able to come really just around the corner from the United States. So it's really geographically speaking. And then if you can have obviously a major mining operation in Greenland to pay for the show, why not? And then of course you have the small population of Greenland that all wants to, Denmark has very little hold, if at all. That's perhaps what people are not talking about, but the Danish control over the Greenland is very little. And we had I think it was Florian Philippot in France. He used to be working for the French embassy there in Greenland. So he knows Denmark, and he knows very well how much power does Denmark has on Greenland. And he said it on several occasions that this is almost inexistent. So it's not a hard thing, and it's not a hard sell. But again, we must remind the people in Greenland that sovereignty is not, become a vassal of the United States, comes with a lot of responsibility, and it's a risk take. Just look at the history. Wherever the United States has been and put military base, look the state of these countries today. You're going to become the next Germany, a mini Germany. They'll control, they'll tell you, they'll steal what they need to take. If it's not obviously industry, it's going to be natural resources, and they'll transform your little island into a fortress, for the Russian to take on. Don't do that to your own people. You don't need to stay sovereign, maintain the multilateral economic relationship with the United States, be friendly, but be firm. This is your country. Don't give it away.
That's just the whole thing about Ukraine, Freddie, is Europeans are all like up in arms. Oh, Putin's war of choice, that borders can't be moved in Europe by force. And Trump comes in here literally straight out of the gates. I want Greenland, and tells Copenhagen to basically stuff it. And so that's kind of challenged that whole sort of trope that they've been running with. I mean, we know that that's BS anyway, Freddie, because it didn't apply to Yugoslavia or Kosovo, that where NATO just basically broke up Yugoslavia into many pieces and then carved out this thing called Kosovo. That's really just a giant airstrip for NATO at the moment. But so we didn't believe that, but I'm just talking for the general narrative of the mainstream public. Trump has based, so that this is the end, Freddie. It should have been the end after Nord Stream. I mean, the light should have went off for Europe, but this end of U.S. deference for its European lineage, there's always that American respect that they at least superficially extended to the European countries. It's over now. So that should have been obvious after Nord Stream. That was so. Although NATO's strong arming individual member states over Ukraine, there's no more self-respect left in any of the member states. They've been usurped by Nazi holdovers like Ursula von der Leyen and this airhead out of Estonia, and so it's a very weak time for Europe. And you've got a Macron is embroiled in a tranny scandal. I mean, that could blow up. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, Keir Starmer is probably the weakest British prime minister. He makes John Major look like Hulk Hogan. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. And then you've got Germany is basically, the government's AWOL pretty much. It's Scandinavia looks like they're ready to take over, actually. They look like solid, and they're like loads of money up north in Scandinavia. I mean, they're not doing badly out of this, are they? So yeah. Southern Europe is a basket case. So this is crazy time for Europe.
It is crazy time, and for us, it's like, I mean, we can clearly see that there's going to be a communication channels that's going to be open with the U.S. administration between Callas and the State Department. So these foreign policy goons are going to start to try to negotiate in certain way and say, look, this is what we want. This is what the United States style is, which is dictate what they want, and the Europe will try to accommodate the United States. So Rubio was on the phone yesterday with Callas. That was the first conversation they've had. Can you imagine a conversation between Rubio and Callas? The poor guys might have think, where did they find this one?
Well, he is smart. Rubio
He's smart. He's smart. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's a couple of ideas you could almost agree with him, but he says a lot of nonsense. But there's a couple of things that
Callas, kind of? I mean, I can see her making TikTok videos.
Yeah,
but that's it. I can't. She's kind of like the AOC of Europe, kind of. AOC is smarter than her, though. She's really down there. There's a debate going as who's more of an airhead, Alina Baerbock or Kaja Kallas. I mean, there's a debate.
It's a mix of ID from Austria and Estonia. There's no charisma. The IQ is is what it is. Everybody's gifted,
Great.
and I don't go be hard on her. If you don't have it, it's okay. That's fine. It's but being the head of foreign policy, a vice president of the European Commission, that's maybe a big suit for you.
I mean, at this time, it's a really bad move.
Yeah,
they should put a strong statesperson to kind of balance out van der Leyen, who's completely out of her mind on photo ops. And Callas is more into the photo ops than van der Leyen. I mean, between the two of them, it's like an Instagram presidency in Brussels. I mean, it's just
she serves a purpose to diffuse, everybody concentrate on Carle. She's never had so much press, she's got so much press, so much, presence on the media. So it kind of disengaged van der Leyen. And I'm sure that's the reason why she was not brought in there because of her extraordinary brilliance, and intellect. She was brought in to entertain and have people upset about her. Yeah, be upset with her so you don't have, because she got to take a couple of punches as well, not always on van der Leyen. So, but I mean, this is gonna end up like the whiskey on the rock. I mean, she's gonna be left on the rock, be dehydrated very soon. She's gonna have to serve a purpose. When Rubio realized that she's the perfect idiot, that he's gonna take whatever he can out of her, probably Greenland, in some kind of, whatever, presented in a nice communication plan, with a couple of consultancy firms making nice little brochures and PDF, and then telling you this is a good idea. It's good for Europe. They will sell it to you. They'll say, Greenland with the US, it's good for Europe.
Better for Europe. Yeah,
it's good. It's good, fundamentally good, economically speaking, geographically speaking. It's good. It works for us. They will sell it to us. What's my word?
Yeah, that's it. I'm not doubting it. So with last question, Freddie, and thank you for going over time. If Europe is weak, we agree Europe is at its weakest point ever, maybe in its history since modern Europe was formed. Okay, individual member states have never been weaker, or even potentially fighting with each other over some of these issues. And so the U.S. and Britain can sit back, and then. Well, my question to you then, last question, Freddie, is war on the cards for Europe again?
I think naturally it makes sense. It makes sense that it really depends on the trajectories that Europe is going to take. This big choice right now needs to be made as far as how you react to Trump's foreign policies. And unless you're going to disengage, that's the answer. If you don't disengage with the United States with a very strong, very, very strong policies as far as the United States is concerned, and then unless we're going to see the European Union slowly, as an organization, an institution, breaking down, falling on itself, collapsing, and NATO being sent to the trash can, we're gonna have a war, because it's a matter of existence. You need to exist. NATO need to exist. The EU need to exist. To exist, the EU expand. NATO conquer. It's not a defense organization. It's a political organization, which now seems to be really much hand in hand with the EU. It's solid. It's been conquered. It's been captured. And now they can go and expand together. And then that's how you get money from the European citizen. But the US citizens, people don't really understand. The US sometimes misunderstands. It's more kind of a bullying way to bully people into doing things for them. But they miss sometimes they underestimate Europeans. I think and that's going to be their mistakes, because this only works when the EU and NATO works. The day there's EU and NATO and we go out there and we take them out, politically speaking, of course, but the day we take them out and we say enough is enough, let's go back to what we know the best, which is to work with each other, strengthen our economy, strengthen our geographical interest and geopolitics when it makes sense for all sides involved, and then of course, more importantly, embrace this multipolar world. This is where the new money, the new economy, the new skills are going to be required. Go travel the world, learn Chinese, learn Russians, learn Arabic. Doesn't matter. Just be multipolar and adapt and build the tools and the instrument that's going to make you an independent power. This is, for me, the 21st century key for success if we want to avoid war, is to become an independent power in charge of their own policy and own destiny. If we don't do that and we keep taking orders from EU and NATO, my answer to you is yes, there will be a war.
It does seem like the future economically is to the east, and that's exactly what the U.S. is trying to prevent Europe from facing east. They want them facing west. What are they selling in the west? I don't know. I'm not buying it, but you know, the elites will, but how long will till the people figure this out? I think that's a really good answer to that very difficult question, Freddie. So thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Look, great conversation as usual, Freddie. I mean, important conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to direct you to 21st Century. Let me throw this up on screen here, 21stcenturywire.com. This is an article that Freddie did recently, YALTA 2.0. This is pinned at the top of our features section. This is the type of work that Freddie's doing some really great geopolitical analysis here, but also giving some ideas about possible solutions. We're not just here to rattle the cage and complain all the time. We actually have some ideas that we're putting out there, and this is getting into the hands, hopefully, of decision makers. So yeah, great job on this YALTA 2.0 piece. It really kind of just gives a road sign ahead of some possibilities that to get out of this, the quagmire that we're in right now. I mean, that's got to happen if we want to avoid war. That's what needs to happen. Yeah. So it's a really good piece, Freddie.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. You know, it's really encapsulating the idea of not looking back and basing all your decisions based on the past. You know, if you're going to go back to pact and treaty, which clearly are not working, we will know if a treaty works by now. So not going back into that, not being regressing to old policies on old treaties and what has been done, what happened with this particular treaty or the other one. You know, this is pure propaganda from the mainstream media because they capture the term YALTA 2.2. If you capture the term YALTA 2.2, what you do is you delay the conference. And the reason why, in certain way, it's good. It's good to delay the conference because all the parties are not ready. And the process needs to be in place before you can reach a YALTA 2 conference. But the ultimate end game here is not the Ukraine victory. It's actually the opposite. It is about really giving guarantee for the Russian for their security interest in the region and letting them have their sphere of influence where they normally should have it. It's no problem for them to have, and I don't understand, and will never support the idea that they're not part of the European family. The Russians are part of the European family. That's the bottom line, as far as I'm concerned. And US has no business coming here and telling us that they are not.
Yep. Culturally, politically, historically, civilization-wise, Russia and Europe are so interlinked on so many different levels. So it's an unnatural break, unfortunately, that's been created there. Here's Freddie's archive as well. You can look at all of his other work up at 21stcenturywire.com. Some great, also the Middle Corridor. I mean, Freddie, we're going to have a discussion about the Middle Corridor and Azerbaijan. You've done some really great work on that as well. So that's a whole conversation. We're probably going to bring in some of our colleagues. Let's try that next week. Let's bring in let's continue this Baltic discussion next week. Try to bring in one of our expert Scandinavian colleagues if you don't mind. Are you interested in doing that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I have my idea who you have in mind. Probably Matt. I would say
someone like that. Yeah, we'll see who's
Matt
available.
Would be great. I would great.
Yeah.
I was with him yesterday on RT with Peter Lavelle and other guys from Greece, Dominique. I can't remember his name. Sorry, and I apologize for that. But yes, Matt's fantastic. Just great guys to pick your brain. You know, we all feed off each other's. You know, and it's a great inspiration. You know, so fantastic. Yeah, I'd love to have him to talk about some whole historical, you know, geopolitics. You know, back.
Let's talk about whiskey on the rocks next week.
Yeah, whiskey on the rock. Let's talk about whiskey on the rock and
whiskey on the rocks and the sabotage of the Yamal pipeline.
That's an interesting story, isn't it?
Yeah. And
the submarine operation, you know, by the UK. with American sub that looks like Italian one. I mean, this is really
impossible.
beautiful.
It's a
It's
conspiracy
just like nobody's
theory.
aware of this. It's like
It's
most people are like, when you say that, what are you talking about? Yeah, in the Swedish water, it went on for
Isn't that
months.
interesting? Oh, okay. That actually happened. Yep.
It happens. Yeah, it's
It
well
actually happened.
reported, and it's not been sorted still in Sweden. Yeah, it's poor Olaf Palme, man. That guy's is there. I feel sorry for what they did to him. Really,
No, that's tragic.
it's
Really,
tragic, isn't it?
really
It's
tragic.
When your own military goes against your own country's interest, you really must question, what's going on in there and what's happening today. Is it any different?
I don't think so. It's not
Not
that
now.
different.
Not now. At the moment, everybody's kind of playing the same instrument. They're all tuned in. They're all in accord. So, but far long.
I don't think it's that different, Freddie. I don't think it's that different. I think it's very, very much the same game. Just different players, different actors, a bit more cash here and there, but the same game. It's basically the same game. Anyway, well, let's break that down next week. I'm looking forward to that great discussion. Freddie Ponton, ladies and gentlemen, follow him on X. We'll try to put that on the screen as well. Freddie's X account. Here, we'll bring that up here. That's the account you want to follow, you guys. If you're not following Freddie, you're missing out. His tweets are very informative. He's also doing some great takes on a lot of other breaking news and analysis as well. But thank you very much, Freddie. Appreciate it. I'll see you next week.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, Patrick. Goodbye now.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. That's Freddie Ponton. He's doing amazing work at 21stcenturywire.com. So we really appreciate his contributions there. And, this is obviously a conversation that's going to get more topical in the coming weeks. We're going to be here and probably be on the leading edge of this conversation. So that's something to look forward to. We'll bring Freddie back in, of course, to discuss updates on this and other things. And just a reminder, you guys really appreciate all the support we've gotten in the last couple of weeks with our winter fundraising drive. If you like what 21st Century Wire is doing on Sunday Wire, this program, we'll probably be doing a midweek program now, 21 Wire Live midweek. We're going to rebrand the Sunday Wire with a new look on Sunday, but we'll resume 21 Wire Live. Will be midweek, and we'll have a lot of conversations just like this. So deep dives on, one or two subjects. So it's something to look forward to. Support us for our winter fundraising drive. We are listener and audience supported. We are true independent media. We've been going strong since 2009. 2009 started as a humble blog post, and we've developed and we've become a great hub for independent journalism and working with some great people. I've got a great team here. We're also in the alternate current radio family as well. You've seen Hesher and Ruckus on Sundays, also on our X spaces we're doing. So again, help support us in any way you can. Donate or subscribe and become a member monthly at 21wire.tv. There's options there. Just go to the donate link that's on my X profile, or just go to 21stcenturywire.com and check it out. Just hit donate support. Lots of options there. Ladies and gentlemen, we need your help now more than ever. So thank you once again. I think that's all we've got time for today, but it's been great during this. It's our midweek 21 Wire Live. Let's call it the Midweek Wire. So appreciate you guys joining us for this maiden voyage. That's all I've got time for. Take care, everybody. I'll see you this Sunday for the Sunday Wire live and direct. That'll be in a few days. So looking forward to that. Take care.